They say justice is blind, but here in America, justice is often in the eye of the beholder, and for some, justice is simply denied. In this series, we'll take a look at justice from different angles, here on Perspective Justice.
Welcome back, everybody. You are tapped into the Perspective Justice podcast with Kojo and Yaya. What is going on? How you feeling?
Wondering what's going on in Louisiana, man. What is the what?
This is one of the most interesting jailbreaks. I mean, the story just keeps evolving as we go along. So, as of right now, so for people who haven't been paying attention, there was a jailbreak in what is it called? Orland Parish Prison. So, as the story was evolving, I was trying to understand what kind of a prison it was. So it looks like it says it's a city jail, but I'm like a county jail, but they call it a prison. So
Yeah,
but
I think it's like a county jail type thing.
like a county jail, yeah. So it looks like right now initially there were 10 people that escaped, right? So they had 10 of them escape, and then as of right now, as we record this, there are 5 that are still loose. Even on this screen here, it looks like Corey Boyd, he was just caught today, if I'm not mistaken. So all of these guys are fairly young. I think the oldest is 42. So yeah, so they basically they broke out of jail. So 5 are still loose. Antoine Massey, he's like the one of the most dangerous ones because from what we know, so we were talking about how they got out, right? So it's kind of interesting. So from what it looks like, they were able to bust through the wall. Well, they pulled the toilets out and bust through the wall, or went through the wall and got out.
After they got it was a maintenance worker. They said that supposedly they threatened to shank him if he didn't turn the
Right,
water off. So
right.
he
That was
turns the water
Antoine
off.
Massey.
hmm They they get the water off, get the toilets out, get through the wall. They said they get down to they got downstairs, or they got down to the lower level. They were
Hmm.
able to pop one of the doors, one of the sliding doors.
Right.
It said, and then they were able, as many have seen on the on the television, they just it
I
was like a
know because
free for all. Everybody started running. I'm surprised more of them didn't run off.
well, yeah, because we live in a time now everything's on camera, so you can see here they have all the video of them, pulling the doors. This
I
other
mean,
guy's walking by
how is
like,
it
what you
that
doing, dog?
easy right? How is it that easy to pop a jail door? I mean,
I don't know. It's pretty interesting
that was
because
great.
when you look at this story, so 10 of them got out. Antoine Massey was the main one who I guess said he was going to shank the maintenance manager or maintenance worker. So the maintenance
hmm
manager or maintenance worker, I should say, not manager, but he's a plumber. So his name is what's his name? Sterling Williams. So he's locked up. They arrested him. He's got 10 counts against him. So,
I know.
and his bond is $1 million.
That's
So,
crazy. It's probably more than some of them other people had.
well, you know what? Here's the thing. So, I was looking into this earlier, and I'm like, it seems like either he helped them, like willfully, or he's being used as like a fall guy for this thing to blame. You know what I'm saying? So,
I don't know. The thing is, his story is plausible, right? I mean, some big guy says, "Hey, I need you to do this, or I'm gonna shank you. I'm gonna stab you. I'm gonna cut you up." That's a
right,
plausible story, you know.
right.
But at the same time, it's like, well, I think it was. I don't know if it was one of the prosecutors. I think it might have been a prosecutor. She was giving an interview earlier, and she was saying, "Well, if he was being threatened, he should have brought that to the attention of somebody else."
Right.
So, I mean,
I, you
that's
know,
also possible. That
it could
also
go
makes
either
sense.
way.
Go either way.
It could go either
So,
way. So, go ahead, Mom, go ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say we're going to have to see how that one plays out in court, because see what evidence they have. They've
Right.
got to have something to back up, some other evidence to support the prosecution anyway, some other evidence to support their theory that he helped them willfully, other than the
Right.
fact that he turned the water off. There's got to be more
Right.
than that.
Right, exactly. Now the thing. So from what I understand, the full story with the maintenance worker or the plumber. So from what I understand, he was at the jail doing something else, and what happened is that there was a toilet, a handicap toilet that was overflowing or running or whatever, and
Hmm.
he just happened to be working on something else and ended up there was no work ticket for this toilet, so he ended up going to, I guess, fix the toilet, but in order to fix it, he got to turn the water off. So that's what the story was. So they said he turned the water off, and that's when it was the same time when this whole jailbreak was supposed to happen. So apparently that's what the maintenance workers lawyer is saying. So um,
Hmm.
so we'll
So
see.
then, when did this other story
What's
come
that?
about? So when did it? So when was he threatened to be shanked? Then.
Well, apparently this is what the lawyer for the maintenance workers saying is that he was going to fix this toilet, and he was supposed to be fixing this toilet, and I guess apparently he was going to shut it off because he's not denying that he shut the water off. But what he's saying is that at that point, that was when he was threatened or something. So I don't know. It's an interesting.
It's a little hard to understand because it's like, okay, were you going to turn the water off anyway because of what the work you were doing, or did
Right.
somebody threaten you to turn the water
Right.
off? Which is it? It can't be. It can't necessarily be both, because if you were going to turn the water off anyway, I mean, I guess it could potentially be both. Maybe you were getting ready to turn the water off, and the guy comes up to you and says, "Hey, I need you to, turn this water off, or I'm gonna cut you." You know,
Right.
you could put it
It's
actually be like, "Well, I was gonna turn the water off anyway." I don't know. I don't know. It's a
let me
little
let me play what the lawyer said real quick because this is
okay.
my understanding. Let me play what the lawyer said, and you let me know if it makes sense to you. So let me play a
Mr.
little bit of
Williams
it.
is absolutely
Okay.
innocent that he was pulled by the escapees and is being used as a fall guy by Sheriff Hudson.
There's been accusations that he turned off the water, moved the toilet. What would you say to these accusations?
Well, first off, him turning off the water is not an accusation. It's a fact. We readily admit that. He is the jail plumber. There was an overflowing toilet in what he tells me was a handicap stall that should not have been in use. Nevertheless, was open, and this toilet apparatus was clogged and spilling out into the floor. He was told by a deputy there was no work order. He asked, and the deputy convinced him that as he was there, could he just look at it? He assessed the situation, determined he would have to shut off the water to fix it, which he did in his role as jail plumber.
What has your client said about the threats that he may or may not have received from?
That is a complete mischaracterization by law enforcement. Mr. Williams had a passing exchange with one of the inmates wherein he was assessing the toilet, made the determination he needed to turn off the water. The inmate, as he was there, happened to say something about shanking him. He didn't take this as a threat. He wasn't acting out of fear. He was taking this as normal jailhouse banter. He reported it during his interview with law enforcement because it is a fact that happened. But certainly, as lawyers and journalists both know, not all facts lead somewhere. He stated it as a fact, which it was. The fact that law enforcement has now tried to jump on that and make that his reason for conspiring, I suppose, is nothing more than a fallacy.
From my understanding, from what I just heard, he's saying that he was working on the toilet, and Antoine Massey threatened to shank him in passing. Now the question is, in order for them to get out to go through the wall with the toilets to pull the toilets out, you do have to cut the water because there's going to be water everywhere. So it's kind of like if they're planning the escape, and cutting the water off is like a big part of this thing. Did they just get lucky that he happened to turn the water off right?
Well, and that is a very, very, very crucial point. unless this was a spur of the moment thing, which I'm sure it was not, because very few escapes happen spur of the moment, if any at all, right?
Right.
So this obviously was planned. So it would stand to reason that if there was a planned prison break that involved going through a toilet, you would plan it at a time when you know someone is going to be there who is able to turn the water off.
Right.
So
Right.
if you look at it from that perspective, which I'm sure that's what the prosecution is looking at, it's like, okay, well, they obviously planned to go through the wall. They needed
Right.
the water to be shut off. How is it that you just happened to be there
Right.
at a time when the
When
escape
they
is
need
going
when they need the
down?
water off.
When they need the water off, they just
Right.
happen to plan it on a day when they know the plumber is going to be there. Like,
Yeah.
either you are way too friendly with the inmates and told them your schedule, and like, hey
Right.
man, you know what, I'll be back on,
Right.
whatever. I think it was happened Friday or whatever. Just
Yeah,
for
I think
argument's sake,
the
let's say,
16th.
hey
Yeah.
man, 16, hey man, well, hey, you're talking, whatever. All right, man. Well, I'll see you. I'll be back on Friday, man. I'll be back on Friday around 2 o'clock. I'll see you then. I mean, are you really going to say all that? You're exactly when you're going to be there, what time, and all of that.
Right. Probably
I
not.
mean, I guess it's plausible, but
Well,
it seems
the
relatively
fact that
likely.
the water has to be off, because I'm assuming
Right.
I don't know, because even because when you pull a toilet now in prison, right? So I've never been to prison, but I'm imagining the toilets are not like the regular home toilets where you have a valve where you can shut the water off from your side of the wall. They probably don't
Right.
have control of that. It's probably to shut the valve off. It's probably inside the wall
Inside the
itself.
wall.
Um,
That would
or
probably have to be accessed through some sort of maintenance hatch or maintenance access door that only jail staff can get to
right.
turn the water off in a particular section.
You know what?
That's
You're right.
what would make sense.
You're right, because perhaps the actual the valve isn't anywhere near the toilet. So there
Probably not.
maybe they can't even, so if they were to pull those toilets out, it would just be water everywhere. They have nowhere to stop the water pressure other than where, like you said, wherever the maintenance person could do it. So now that I look at it like that, it's gonna be a tough sell based on that. Now the lawyer made it sound like, yeah, he's just doing his job and it was something in passing, but it's going to be a tough sell if the water cutting off was pertinent to it happening and
Well,
he
and,
cut
and
the
that's
water
the
off.
thing. Even if what his lawyer is saying is true. Oh well, he just mentioned that in passing, and he's saying that, oh, the prosecution's using that. They've totally twisted that, and they tried to make that a reason why he cooperated. Well, even if that's true, it still doesn't explain the fact that if turning off the water was important to their plan, how did they either are, I mean, they've got to be extraordinarily
They gotta be the
lucky.
luckiest people and luckiest
I
inmates in the world,
mean,
right?
right, to plan your prison break that involves needing to have the toilet turned off, or the water shut off, and you happen to be there at the exact time that a plumber is there.
Right,
I mean,
right,
a plumber, not even just some other jail worker that might have access, but an
right.
actual plumber is there who's
Oh
able to turn
man,
the water off. So that's a
who could have
little,
such luck, right?
yeah, that's gonna be
So
hard to explain. That
it's going to
one's
be
gonna
hard
be
to
hard.
explain. He's got 10 counts. He's got $1 million bond. So they probably feel pretty strong. Now from the beginning,
Yeah,
they were saying that this thing was an inside job when it first happened. And I was like, I wonder who helped them. So I was thinking like
right.
correctional officers. Now, as of right now, 4 employees have been suspended. Now,
Mm,
not necessarily from what I know because they helped, but because
maybe
this
they were
this
negligent.
jail was understaffed. So So the way this jail is supposed to work, so they actually have, so there's a couple things that happen. One, there's supposed to be bed checks every 90 minutes to 2 hours, which didn't happen.
Hmm. Of
So
course.
they didn't find out that these inmates escaped for 7 hours. It was
That's
7 hours
crazy.
before they realized they were gone, right? So you would think in 2025 in a jail that's not even possible. That's like something that you would have saw in Alcatraz. You know what I mean? Like back in the 60s or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little. Ugh. I mean, for 7 hours, you mean for 7 hours didn't nobody do their job? I
Nobody knew
mean,
they were gone, yo.
in
That's
7 hours, they should have been counted at least 3 times.
at least, and that's the crazy thing. So when you look at it, so there's that fact. The bed checks were not done, right? And then the other thing is that so the way it's supposed to be, from what I understand, I was taking down some notes earlier on this, and what they have is they have it's supposed to be one deputy, one lieutenant per pod, and there's 6 pods on each floor. So I think this jail has 3 floors. So there's supposed to be 24 correctional employees or officers per floor. That's how many they're supposed to have. But for what I understand, obviously they have 3 floors, and it's supposed to be basically two officers, a deputy and a lieutenant for each pod. So each floor has 6 pods on it. So it's a pretty big, based on, in my mind, it's a pretty decent size jail. You know what I'm saying?
So
So
then that would at least be 12 per floor, not 24.
my
24
bad.
is a lot.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. You're absolutely right. 12 per floor. My fault. Yeah. So 6 and then 2 each pod. So be 12 correctional officers per floor. And from what I understand, there's 3 floors, so it should have been about 36. Well, not about 30, 36. 12 times 3, 36. 36 correctional officers monitoring the area. Now, from what I understand now, Susan Hudson is the sheriff, so she's catching a lot of heat and she's taking full responsibility. So she said that they're operating at about 60% of staff. So, being a correctional officer is not an easy thing. So,
It is not. It is
so,
not.
retaining employees and stuff like that is something else. But
I know, especially after this, it's like, do they get paid enough to be dealing with this?
well, you know what? Here's the thing too. The thing that's gonna happen with this whole case is I think people will look at the whole, correctional officer retention rate, right? I think they're gonna look at that. And they're also gonna have to look at the negligence that happened, right? So
Hmm.
on this particular pod that the inmates escaped, from what I understand, obviously the checks weren't being done, but there was nobody, because the film that we watch and other people are watching of them leaving, nobody was watching even the camera. Like no one was paying attention. The one either lieutenant or deputy who was on that particular pod was getting some food.
Oh boy.
you know, and here's the thing. This thing is
Was
actually,
he on break at least? I mean, or were he just like, I'm hungry, I'm going to get something to eat?
well, he went to get some food. I don't know if he was on break. So
Wow.
he may or may not have been on break, but all of these guys, from what I understand, they are all from Louisiana. So they're all
Okay.
native to Louisiana, and they, pretty much from the beginning, they felt like these inmates they haven't ran very far, right? So they're all pretty much the 5 that have been captured so far are in Louisiana. So there's still 5 free: Antoine Massey, Lenton Van Buren, Leo Tate, Derek Groves, and Jermaine Donald. He's the oldest, 42. But all these guys are in their 30s and 20s. And I think the Antoine Massey guy, I think he may have the worst record. I mean, not all of them. Now, here's the other interesting thing, right? So the other interesting thing is that what they were saying is that they try not to put maximum security inmates mixed in with minimum security inmates, right? They try not to put them together. But what they were explaining is that, overcrowding in jail, it's just like they try
Yeah.
not to, but they end up having to do that anyway. You know.
Well, now that they've been recaptured, they are transferring them to the maximum security prison at Angola, which is been described as hell on earth. So
It sound like it.
yeah, Angola is. I've watched several documentaries about Angola, and they have quite the reputation for being one of the most violent, dangerous prisons in the country.
Now
But
this
they
is the
had
state prison.
a state. This is state
Okay.
prison. This is where death row inmates are kept. This is where executions take place.
Okay.
This is the place. This is, I think it was an old plantation. It's way out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm,
Escaping from there is virtually impossible. I mean, it's
mm,
miles and miles from nowhere,
mm,
and
mm, mm.
so it's maximum security. So they're taking these guys down there. Um,
I see.
so I
Yeah,
mean,
this thing does look like a
yeah,
plantation.
yeah.
Wow.
Angola had quite the reputation. They actually had turned things around with their previous warden, who who put a lot of changes in place. Yes, and there was actually a lot of death row documentaries down there. They do
Hmm.
yard work, they do field labor, out
Yeah,
there growing their food, and um, yeah,
they ain't
that's
gonna get
that's
out of that
Angola.
place.
No, they said
Wow.
most of the people that are sentenced to Angola are doing life. Most of the, I think it's something like 80 to 90% of inmates in Angola are never getting out.
Never getting out.
That is,
Well,
yeah,
it's
that
it's
is a
it's
rough.
it's definitely it's definitely a situation that they're gonna really look at the negligence because you know there aren't a lot of like big prison breaks. This doesn't really happen as much now. I mean, the technology's
Not like
crazy.
that.
Yeah, yeah, and to be able to go through a wall, that just seems like something from the 70s, you know what I'm saying? Or the 60s or 70s, maybe the 80s, where the people would just chip away at a wall and then go through. So I haven't heard anything like this in a long time.
And you know what I just thought about too was that it had to have been an inside job in order for them to find out where that toilet shaft or whatever, where that would lead to. Because you being, arriving at the jail, how would you know that I can get out if I get through this wall and get to wherever that leads to? How do you know that you've got to have obtained some sort of inside information about
Right,
the jail structure and
right.
how it was built, when it was built? Obviously, it looks like a pretty old facility, right?
Yeah,
So, who told them, or where did they get their hands on? Let's say, I mean, this is probably unlikely, but let's say they got their hands on some blueprints or something. How did they obtain this information to know that this particular toilet is the one that we need to break through? Because behind this wall, we can jump down to floor one or floor two, and
that's
then
a
we can
great
get
point.
here. So, and I would think that this is part of the thing that's bolstering the prosecution's theory about, or the jail's theory about it being inside job. It
Towards the
can't just be
maintenance
the
worker.
maintenance worker, right?
It's got
Well,
to
I'm
be more
sure
than the maintenance worker, right?
it's going to be more. I think that there's more than just him. There's got to be more to it.
Well, no, you're right because it does take time to understand the schematics of the inside of the walls. Because, like, yeah, like just because you pull the toilet out, it's not like what if it didn't lead to anything? Like,
Lead
what
it.
if you pulled the toilet out and it
Right,
led to nothing?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Then you'd still be charged with attempted escape, even if for
basically.
destruction of or even if they didn't charge you with escape, like just say, "Oh, well, why are you tearing up, jail
Yeah.
property and
Yeah,
stuff
it's
like
not
that."
going to be a
So
good thing.
yeah, I don't think that they would have done that just for exploration purposes to say, "Okay, let's tear up this toilet and see what happens."
Let's see what. Right. Let's just see what happens, and maybe we
Yeah.
can maybe it leads somewhere. Nah, this is going to be interesting because I'm trying to see the four employees. They suspended 4 employees, but it doesn't seem like anyone has been like arrested. So the 4 employees that were suspended, I'm not sure if it looks like it was just. I'm assuming out of negligence, quote unquote. They were probably the people who were, maybe the guy who was getting the food at the time. He's probably one of the 4 that got suspended. You know what I'm saying?
I
Or
would
the
I
guy
would
that was
think
eating the
so.
shrimp
I would think so.
back there eating the po' boy.
Right.
While people
I mean,
now, the other interesting thing is like, um, how in the world did these guys scale the wall? So that's the other thing that's interesting too. Much more than 3 floors. I don't know if all of it is prison, but nonetheless, it doesn't
I
look
mean,
like
it
they.
looks like it
There is a
looking
barbed wire fence there.
right, and then looking
I'm
at
saying,
the
yeah,
well, just looking at the windows on there, it looks like it kind of reminds you of most downtown jails. Like if you've ever
yeah,
seen the MCC in Chicago, that's a high
yeah,
rise, you know, many, many, many story building. Like you couldn't jump out that
hmm
window and live. You know what I mean?
right, of course,
I mean,
yeah.
it's that kind of reminds me of the MCC a little bit, and yeah. So that's why I'm wondering. Like, okay, did they what they had to have been on another floor because if you're breaking through a wall to get
Well,
somewhere, and I forgot how they described it, but you're breaking through a wall to get to the front area. If you're on the first floor, I don't know. I guess
well,
I'm
you know
trying to
what?
figure out what wall you breaking through. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. The thing about it is that let me see. So the actual first floor. Here's the other thing I have to assume too. So the first floor, quote unquote, is gonna be maybe not the first floor from what we're looking at. So um maybe the first floor is here, I'm
Mm,
guessing.
okay, but
And then they get down to
that's
the like
still to the main floor.
so and then they
I
get
mean,
out to
that's
the
not
main floor.
that fence. Yeah, because it kind of looked from that
What's that?
surveillance video. It looked like they were running and then they jumped off something. That fence don't look
So
like
that
it's
looks
hard to
like the
scale.
stairs though.
It don't look that tall.
No, I doubt it. I doubt the defense doesn't look that crazy to scale, and they obviously have shirts and stuff with them. So that wasn't like no
Mhm.
super top security type of fence because it just isn't. And
No.
honestly, I think the floor, if I'm not mistaken, the floor that they were on was like a minimum security floor
Mm.
anyway. So you know, let me play a little bit
Well,
of Susan. What's my girl's name? Susan Hudson. So she's in hot water right now because obviously at the end of the day, you know,
she's the
everybody's
sheriff.
gonna catch blame. And just for clarity for people to understand too, uh a jailbreak is serious. We laughing, but it's pretty serious because you got to figure 5 of them have been caught. But if you live in New Orleans right now, you got 5 people. I don't know. I'm not going to run across all the charges, but I know for sure a couple of them, especially Antoine Massey, and a few of them have murder. You know what I'm saying? Murder, rape.
Yeah.
These are like serious charges. These are not like guys who just did like some, you know, breaking and entering or some small petty theft. Some of these are some serious crimes, and they are facing life. So
Yes,
listen,
especially in New Orleans, especially in Louisiana, has some of the toughest sentencing in the United States. Even for a second degree murder could mean life without parole. Whereas
yeah,
in other states, a second degree murder could, you know, be 20 years,
right,
So I mean they have quite the incentive to run.
yeah. And look, when you have serious time and you actually get out, because keep in mind, people have to realize, okay, in the United States, there's about 2,000 jailbreaks per year, or 2,000 escapes. Let me say 2,000 escapes, and the capture rate is like 95%, right? Very few stay free. And
Right.
this includes people, these are not all jailbreaks. This includes people who had like an authorized leave and just didn't come back, right? Or were working, in some form or fashion where they had some easy access to leave and just didn't come back. So that includes that too. But
Yeah.
jailbreaks are not very common anymore because with technology, they can see everything. So it's not
Yeah.
like, you know what I'm saying? And of course, with every jailbreak, you have the past that they were able to look at and say, okay. So honestly, I'm surprised that they, like I said, went, pulled the toilet and was able to get out behind the wall, because this has been done before.
Right.
You know what I'm
It's not
saying?
new.
Like,
It's not new.
it's not
But
new.
obviously, they were desperate to get out. Number one. Number two, they had been planning this for some period of time. Number three, they had to have had some outside assistance, whether it is
Absolutely.
people that work in the prison, friends, family members, associates. Somebody help them. This
Right.
was not a spur of the moment um, situation. But it's funny. I was reading an article about about New Orleans, and this one lady was saying how people of New Orleans are really not that rattled by the prison break
Really?
because 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 New Orleans is a high crime city anyway, right? That's one of the highest crime. Uh, I mean, next to places like Chicago and LA, New York, some of the bigger cities with high crime rates, New Orleans was right up there with one of them. So they're
Mm-hmm.
used to violent crime. And
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of looking at it where, and this is just according to one blogger or whatever, I guess
Sure.
they were kind of looking at it as, well, these guys are trying to get away. So, they're not really, well, she said she wasn't really too worried about her personal safety because she was just like, well, you got to deal with you got to deal with crime every day.
Anyway,
So
yeah. No, that's a
anyway,
good
so
point. That's a good point. I mean, I tend to agree with that too. Like, I think that it's a potential for someone to get hurt if you in the way or you trying to stop
right.
them. You know what I'm saying? Now they've put a $20,000 price tag on everybody, on each one of their heads right now, I
Mm,
believe, to an arrest. So, you know, so that does create some incentive for someone to try to, look, you have different types of people. Some people are just going to tell if they see and just say, hey, I see him. He's over here by the gas station. And then you
right.
have a certain people who would try to be, MacGyver or be like, you know
Mm,
what I'm saying? Try to be
mhm,
the bounty hunter, you know,
right.
and
Right.
try to capture them themselves. But 20
Right.
grand is 20 grand. So, it does put some incentive out there. So, but I
Hmm.
agree. Like, I think generally they trying to get away. They're not trying to hurt more people. They probably trying to get away, you know. So we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I mean, and I think one of the main reasons why these five were caught so quickly is that it just seems like across the board as a standard that people put a lot of planning into getting out, but they don't put as much planning into staying free. Like they once they get out, like they're like, okay, I'll figure it out once I get out there, and they realize, damn, this is harder than I thought. You know, like I
That's
think
true.
I think there's a lot of romanticism and idealism in getting free. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it sounds like a great idea. I'm going to get free. I'm going to stay one step ahead of the law. I'm going to hide out. They'll never catch me. But then they get out there and reality sets in. Like, man, I ain't got nowhere to stay. I ain't got nothing to eat. I ain't got no money to get anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like a movie where you're just gonna hop the rails and end up in another state somewhere
Right.
and
Right.
pick up
Well,
odd
exactly.
jobs. Right. Maybe
Yeah.
that was plausible in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But as technology has evolved, like you had said,
You can't go
It's
nowhere.
a whole different,
There's
whole
a
different ball
camera.
game
There's a
everywhere.
camera everywhere. Just you walking down. People don't realize just walking down the street. Now I can't speak for
Mm-hmm.
every city, but let's just take a city like New York. If you walk
Mm-hmm.
down the street within a 1 block radius, you've been filmed about 10 times. Like
Right.
there's surveillance everywhere. So if anybody's
Mm-hmm.
ever seen Enemy of the State with Will Smith, movie that
Mm-hmm.
came out back in '98,
Mm-hmm.
back then it seemed kind of weird to see like the government able to see you everywhere, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's real now. Like the cameras
It's
are
real.
nothing.
Oh yeah.
Surveillance is nothing.
I mean, if anything, you might be, if walking in a neighborhood, you'd be captured on like 4 or 5 different home surveillance cameras.
Exactly. Even that too. Yeah. Not forget about government. Just everyday like Ring cameras. You captured on footage
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Like funny enough, there's even the police came to our door. This might have been like last summer. They came to the door, and I think somebody had scratched because we live kind of close to the city public works. So somebody had scratched or like kind of their car had scratched one of the public works cars, I think was parked. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, person just probably kept going or whatever. And police came and was like, this so and so happened last week. Would you happen to have any, footage from that time? Because sometimes when people drive down our street, the Ring camera will just go off. It don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
necessarily someone walking up on the porch.
Yeah, it's
It just
the
senses the
motion
movement,
motion
the
sensors.
motion. So, but nothing to your point. Like, yeah, they were. I didn't have the footage from that day. It didn't pop up at that moment as far as my history. But yeah, it's just that simple. So the police even try to get footage from everyday homeowners. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you said
Absolutely.
something that was important too. That the fact that a lot of times people do get out and they don't have a plan. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about these guys, but I think that, like you said, even if you have a plan, it's harder to get away. There was a time in America where you could go to you could go across the country and disappear and go
Mm-hmm.
start a new life,
Right. Right.
and nobody knew you. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
just to go off a subject real quick, if there was a guy named John List, and I believe it was in New
I
Jersey.
remember that
Remember John
story.
List? He killed his
Yeah,
whole family.
killed his whole family. He disappeared for what, 25
It was like
years or
25 some years.
30 years?
He killed his family like in 1971, and I believe he was in New Jersey. And he moved all the way to Seattle, Washington, or somewhere out west. Started a whole new life. Got married. Got old. And it was
Mm-hmm.
on America's Most Wanted. They finally arrested him. He was damn near like 70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Old
Yep, I
man.
remember that. I remember that story. That
You
was
know.
they had played that on America's Most Wanted several times.
Yep.
They were looking for him. He was one of the. I mean, they were really looking for this guy, and that
They sure were.
he was gone for a long time.
He was gone for a long time, man. He
But you
started a
could
whole new
do
life.
that, right? Because I think was it, yeah, early 70s
Yeah, it was
that
like,
he killed his
yeah,
family, and back then, before the age of cell phones and all this other stuff, you could go disappear,
yeah,
but as technology evolved, and digital enhanced age progression
yeah,
photos
that
and,
too.
and all that stuff, that's how he ended up getting caught after all
Exactly.
of those years, like
Exactly.
20
He sure
20
did.
some 20 some odd years, 25
Somebody
years at
say, you
least.
know what, that Agent Hands photo looks like my neighbor or whatever, and then
Right.
before you know it.
Hmm.
So now in 2025, you got to have some paper to you need some money
You
to
do.
disappear.
You
Now they could
absolutely
try to
do.
go to Mexico and just fade into Mexico, but you also gonna stand out of Mexico because y'all ain't Mexican. So
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now
I
if they were
mean,
Mexican, maybe they could just disappear into the fold and just not be seen. But it's gonna be hard to stay free.
even Mexican fugitives from the United States get caught.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it happens. I mean,
It happens all the time.
so I don't know. I feel like it's a matter of time, just a matter of time before those other five are eventually captured. Especially with this being such a national story and a huge embarrassment, they have,
Right.
they are extra determined to catch these
There
guys.
they
So
are.
I'm sure they're working with the FBI. They're working with the U.S. Marshal Service, who are
Hmm.
experts in catching fugitives. So I
Oh,
think that,
they're gonna pull out all the stops for this one for
yeah,
sure because
yeah,
it is an embarrassment, and it's an embarrassment in 2025 for this to happen with all what we have. You know what I'm saying? And the
yeah,
fact that, like we said, there's tons of negligence as far as guarding them.
mhm.
7 hours, nobody knew, so it obviously tells you they were lacking. They were
Very
lacking heavy.
lax.
Now to your point too about help. Now I want to play this real quick because this thing is evolving so fast. They arrested two women who also
Mm.
were supposedly helping them.
Of both the women communicating with some of the fugitives. They say Corvante Baptiste helped the one recaptured last night, Corey Boyd, and that Courtney Harris was at some point used as a getaway car. Now, a Fox 8 law enforcement source says Leo Tate called Harris before the jailbreak. Tate was in the facility awaiting trial on burglary, drug, and weapons charges. Troopers say Harris later drove two of the fugitives around various spots in New Orleans. They say those two are still on the run, but did not identify them any further. In Slidell, troopers say Corvante Baptiste helped to get food to Corey Boyd while he hid from police. They say they have records of phone calls and social media messages. Boyd was picked up by troopers yesterday evening in the 1400 block of Iberville. He's accused of killing Mr. Brandon Fees during a car burglary last year. Now, the two women each face one count of accessory after the fact. In Louisiana, that's a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Now, 5 inmates are still out there, and investigators say they're getting help to stay ahead of law enforcement. Attorney General Liz Murrill says her message is simple: help the escapees, and you will end up behind bars.
If you help them, you will be prosecuted. You shouldn't help them. The more help that they get, the more charges there are going to be.
Is it really worth going to prison over?
Yeah, it's always somebody willing to help. It's always a woman willing to help, but they gonna end up catching these charges, and it's like
I mean, it's not. Is
probably
it
not
like
worth
she
it.
said? Is it really worth it? I don't think so. I don't think it's worth
Well,
catching a felony
yeah,
for
it's
somebody.
definitely not.
I mean, no, for somebody who ain't gonna be able to do nothing for you. He's going to. They gonna put him under the jail. He ain't gonna be able to do nothing for you while
No,
you doing your time in
definitely,
jail. Yeah, I mean,
definitely not. Well, it's interesting because I'm wondering if now these two women, they're 32 and 38 years old. I'm wondering if they were, I don't know, they didn't specify if they were family members or girlfriends or whatever, and or how long they had been talking to them. I'm sure all that'll come out at some point, but like you said, I think they'll probably end up catching the rest of them fairly soon. But
I think so.
it's
I think so. Like you said, you really need some paper to be able to stay free.
definitely.
To keep hiding out, to keep. I mean, you need to really have some very loyal uh, associates and acquaintances and family members that's not going to turn you in, because I tell you what, the longer they stay free, eventually that reward money is going to go up.
Yeah,
It's 20,000 now, but who knows when it's going to be 25, 30,
right.
$50,000. People turn each other in for 5,000.
You got that right. You got
A
that right.
thousand
Listen.
dollar, $1,000 Crime Stopper money. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? I
Yeah.
mean, you start offering people something like $25,000, $30,000. I mean, let alone the 20 that's already on the table.
No, listen.
Somebody's gonna say something, especially if
That's
you can get that money anonymously.
that's
Shoot,
a fact. The individual
somebody gonna get that
per
money.
capita income is $32,000 in New Orleans. New Orleans, there are some well-off people in New Orleans, but New Orleans is not known to be a place of rich people. So, great city, but not a place where the wealthy live. So people need that money, and you're right, because now you got to look at it like this: the less inmates that are free, the more money that could be put towards the reward. You know what I'm saying? Like if it was 10 of them and you had 20 grand a piece 5 days ago, whatever, now they caught half. They can raise that to 40 or 50 or 100. You know, and that you putting a stake around somebody's neck at that point. You know, you putting a sirloin steak around someone's neck. They look like food at this point. But
Oh, for
yeah, it'll
sure.
it'll it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm really wondering what's going to happen with the maintenance worker, and also the
He's going to jail.
you think
He's going to jail. I mean, it's just, I mean, unless he's really got a stellar defense team behind him, there's just too many things that's going to be hard to explain behind. Like, really, how'd they know that particular toilet is the one that they needed to get through? Why not another toilet in another pod? You know what I mean? Why this particular toilet? And you happen to be there that day at that time at that toilet, the exact
yeah.
toilet that they needed to get through to get out. Explain that. How do you explain? Either you are the unluckiest guy in the world, or they are the luckiest inmate in the world. And I don't think it's either one. I don't think it's coincidence.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, and you know, and really looking at the situation. Yeah, let me share this. I'm sure people have saw this before, but let me just share this because you know I'm wondering. No, I agree with you. To your point, yeah, there's no way that they didn't. You know, there's no way that the maintenance it didn't happen just by coincidence as far as cutting the water, but when you look at this, you got to say to yourself because they also put f f the ops 50, I guess f the ops police suck my d uh
Too easy.
and too easy, but of course they didn't put the t 200, so you can't be mad. You can't be mad at them, and then they drew this too easy lol. But this is a little. I wonder how they saw through it.
Something more than just a
I
shank.
guess anything's possible, but yeah, I mean, this is gonna be in the movies. They used to take they used to dig on that one brick and do it for a long time, like in Shawshank
That's what
Redemption.
I'm saying. Like this, I don't think this happened over just a day.
Yeah, this hole seemed to be already right there,
That,
and the
you know
and
what,
the
that makes
toilet
sense.
was bolted to the wall, and this space in and of itself is already there to connect the
There.
pipe. That's my assumption,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then
You know what?
they just
You're
pulled it off.
absolutely right. You're
You know what I'm
absolutely
saying?
right. That makes sense.
They'll probably find out later on how long it was planned.
Yeah.
But I think overall, none of this would have happened if the patrol was correct. So I guess you can look at all of this stuff and say, okay, well, what were the breakdowns? Why? Because they're going to look at why did this happen and how do we prevent it from happening again, right?
Right.
And I think that there's a couple of things you have not cooperation but cooperation from inside because I want to know what the four people who were laid off. I wonder and laid off, but
It's
uh,
suspended.
suspended. I want to know if they helped or they were just laid off for going on lunch or whatever and not paying attention. Because 7 hours is a long time for no one to be doing any checks on the bed. So that's one. So the maintenance worker, we're going to find out about him. They seem to have their claws in him pretty tight. And then I'm gonna play real quickly. I'm gonna play the what's her name? Keep forgetting her name. Susan Hudson. She's the sheriff. So she's the one catching the heat. Let's hear what she has to say real quick because she was gonna run for reelection. I think she's halted her reelection plans right now
Shoot,
because
she might need to resign now.
yeah.
At a city council meeting earlier today, Sheriff Susan Hudson, who oversees the jail, took full responsibility for the escape. She also blamed the failure on insufficient funding.
It is deeply troubling to me as your sheriff, and I know it is equally troubling to you and the public that we are sworn to protect. As your sheriff, I take full accountability for this failure. We have submitted multiple requests over the years for staffing, maintenance, and infrastructure upgrades needed to safely run this jail. Unfortunately, time and deferred investment have caught up with us all.
My first guest tonight is calling on that sheriff to resign. She says blaming funding for this incident is a deflection, not an explanation. Louisiana State Representative Amy Adato Freeman joins me now. Representative, you're the first state official to publicly call on the sheriff to step down. Why do you think she needs to resign?
Well, the reason I think she needs to resign is her lack of accountability and her grand failure of leadership. It's embarrassing to me that she has one job, which is to keep the inmates in the jail and keep the rest of us safe. And right now, I know families who've had to move out of the state and into hiding because they're either witnesses or their attorneys who prosecuted some cases against some of these.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about the fact that, people who may have testified or something against these guys. But again, these guys are trying to stay free. I don't think they're out trying to go get revenge. I mean, anything's possible.
I mean, anything's possible, but I mean, that's kind of, I suppose if that was your reason for breaking out of jail, then that would make sense. But 9 times out of 10, if you're breaking out of jail, you're breaking out of jail because you're trying to be free. So it would kind of be kind of stupid to break out and then go after one of the witnesses or family members or something like that. I mean, that would be stupid. But I mean, you never know. You can never know what's inside a person's mind or what they're going to do.
That's a fact.
But it's not surprising that someone's called for her resignation already. I mean, I'm surprised it didn't. But I disagree with her saying that representative talking about her lack of accountability. I haven't heard a lack of accountability. If anything, I've heard the exact opposite. She's stepped up and said, "You know what? I take full responsibility for this failure." And I don't think that she's deflecting by talking about budget cuts and lack of funding and things like that. I think that she's just pointing out important facts that whether she's the sheriff or somebody else is the sheriff, these things are still an issue.
Right.
Right. And so until they make right those issues by providing the staffing and the infrastructure updates, any sheriff is going to have those same issues. If you don't have enough people to watch everybody who's in the jail, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? I mean, you could keep everybody on lockdown 23 hours a day, but then I don't even know if that's necessarily legal. I mean, in that jurisdiction. I mean, who knows?
No, probably not. Probably not. And it looks like the most county jails, the funding comes from property taxes, and it also comes from state and federal funding. So, it's at the end of the day, crime is one of those things where there's always the question of the funding to deal with people who already committed crime, and also the prevention of crime. You know what I'm saying? So I think you're always going to have crime in society. You're always going to have people who do certain things. I tend to think that if you could help people to avoid crime, you know what I'm saying? I think that would be part of not needing so much prison staff. But that's a whole nother thing in America, and a whole nother episode we'll have to do on that one too, because trying to prevent people from committing crime, and recidivism rate is high for jail.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know if that's going to be solved, because with 60% staffing, obviously there's an issue there.
I mean, that's a huge issue. That's a pretty big issue. And like I said, I think for any sheriff, that's going to be a problem. So I, I, I mean, I feel like it probably would be in her best interest to resign because at this type of event, the buck stops at the top,
Yeah.
stops with the sheriff. And
Yeah.
so when something like this happens, someone's going to have to really to take the fall. And it's going to come, the sheriff's going to have to resign
Well,
behind
what she's
this.
probably going to have to do, in my opinion, here's the thing. I see that point, but I also feel like at the end of the day, it's like it's not personally her fault, but that's her responsibility. But
Stability.
what they can do is they can make sure that they get clear as to why this happened and who was responsible.
Hmm.
So the maintenance worker, obviously, and then people outside of the jail, like the two women, you can't control them, but the
Yeah.
actual correctional officers who were
Hmm.
either in on it or
Right.
wasn't on duty, you're gonna have to come down.
Exactly. What was the breakdown in the process there? These failures that occurred, like obviously there was a laziness there in people, or what they call it, dereliction of duty.
Right.
Clearly that's been happening for a while. It didn't just happen on this day.
Yeah.
So I do agree that the sheriff, the onus falls on her
Hmm.
for this dereliction of duty that's obviously been happening for quite some time. Who's been checking on, are these procedures, is jail procedure being followed?
That's a
Who is
fact too.
checking up on that? Even if, okay, I understand the whole being understaffed, right? But there still needs to be oversight,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, especially keeping in mind, okay, this jail is overcrowded and understaffed. So to me, that obviously means that there are rules that are probably not being followed.
Hmm.
There is, procedures that are being overlooked. There's probably some, so at a certain point, staff becomes apathetic. They don't care. It's like
Right.
whatever, you know. And then you have to
Right.
look at, well, how much are they getting paid too? If they feel like they're overworked, understaffed, and underpaid, they really don't give a shit. So, you know, they probably feel like, well, you know what? I can't control this whole jail. I'm only going to do the little bit that I can do. So at that point, oversight is really, really important.
That's a good point.
Whether you're checking on things once a week, every 2 weeks, at some point,
Just to make sure these things are being done.
or to put something in place to say, okay, obviously if we're understaffed, right? Then what do we need to do to kind of fill in the gap? Because X, Y, and Z is happening because we don't have enough people. What are you doing to fill in that gap?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How do you not notice over an extended period of time that rules are not being followed? People are not doing their job. So,
Hmm.
and it might not be her direct responsibility. People, deputy sheriff or
Sure. Yeah.
senior
It's a chain of
leadership,
command.
the chain of command, senior leadership within the jail. People are not doing oversight to see, okay, is guard X at his station, at his post every day?
Yeah.
Or what's happening within this facility? So
Yeah.
oversight was clearly not happening. And
Right.
again, the buck stops at the top with the sheriff.
No, you're
So,
right. You're absolutely right. And looking at it from that lens, you're right. They probably will ask her to resign because even if you say, okay, these particular deputies weren't doing what they're supposed to do, yeah, the question will be like, okay, well, where was the oversight to make sure that they were doing that? Because, like you said, this is probably not the first time. So,
exactly.
at
Like,
the end of the day, you're right.
how long has it taken, right, for you to notice? You
Yeah.
mean to say this was the first time you noticed that, people were were going to get food when they're supposed to
And
be
nobody's guarding that pod. Nobody
right,
is guarding that pod at the time. So
right.
you're absolutely right. And also to that point, like you said, we don't know how long everything was planned, but you have to assume that these inmates said, okay, I noticed that they're lacking, and I see how they're lacking, and this is how we can take advantage of it to get out of here, because it probably was not
Absolutely.
a spur of the moment thing, right?
No,
So you
no,
know,
no. Who gets out spur of the moment? The only
yeah,
time
nothing.
the only time I've ever seen stuff like that happen is when, like, during a jail transport or
Right,
something,
right,
when
something like that.
one
Yeah,
guy, one guy who planned to escape gets loose, and other people decide to
yeah,
run because it's like, ooh, it's an opportunity.
it's an
This guy
opportunity.
did all the work for him, right?
Right.
It's a crime of opportunity.
Yeah.
That happens, but that doesn't even happen that often.
No,
You
barely
know,
ever happens. It's like
barely
movie.
ever
You know what I'm
happens.
saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've
So,
seen some documentaries about it. When one guy escaped, he's tussling with the guard in the
yeah.
van, and
Right.
he happens to get his chain free. He's chained
Right.
to other inmates, and once he breaks himself free, now the rest of the guys like, oh well, shit.
Yeah.
They start
I'm gonna try
running.
to get out too. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, he didn't flip the van over. Let me get up out of here.
Yeah. But
So
yeah, it's like now,
that's true.
people learn, police learn all these things from things that happened in the past. So anytime something happens, they're like, okay. So that's why I think this case is going to be interesting, because it's not a lack of it's not a in my opinion, it's not something that's lacking in the physical prison itself, like, oh, they should have built the wall better or this and this and that.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of oversight at the end of the day. And
absolutely.
anytime you don't have that oversight, but we gonna see what's up. We gonna see what's up.
Yeah,
In this case, as of the time we're recording this, it's 5 prisoners still free. um it's gonna be interesting. I think at the end of the day, we have to take a look at the fact that, yes, when something's understaffed, oversight has to be even better. And yeah,
absolutely.
so
Absolutely. Oversight has to be a little bit tighter. If you
yeah,
don't have the people to do stuff, and I guess that would be my perspective on what justice looks like in this situation.
yeah,
Is the sheriff is going to need to step down. Ultimately, the buck stops with
yeah,
her and her failure to ensure that oversight was happening.
right,
And ultimately, that is her responsibility. Even if you're
100%,
not the one directly doing it, you need to make sure that it's being done. And you're the one
100%.
that's going to always need to be aware that, okay, I'm responsible for this jail. I know this
Hmm.
jail is understaffed, and who's I need to make sure that the people I put in place, or the people that are in place, that I'm, because you're the top person, so
Right.
you're everybody's boss. So let me make sure that so and so, are they doing the oversight that I want them to do, and it's her responsibility to come up with the plans for oversight. If you
Hmm.
know that, okay, this is understaffed, underfunded, this is now a dangerous situation. I'm
Hmm.
responsible not only for the safety of the guards, but of the inmates, and now the people around them. So,
Hmm.
I mean, that's a pretty big failure. So, in this case, I feel like my perspective on justice is that sheriff gonna need to step down.
Hmm.
I think several other people under her are going to need to lose their jobs as well, because she wasn't the only person who was derelict in duty. There
Yeah.
was a lot. I think there's quite a few people in that chain of command who just weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. There was just a culture of apathy, I think,
Right.
and anybody who was involved in the escape and in helping them, whether it was beforehand or after the fact, um, they need to be charged as well. And
Yeah.
you do the crime, you do the time.
Yep.
Especially you helping out murderers and rapists and all this and that.
Yeah. Well, we're
And,
gonna we're gonna see what's up, because at the end of the day, yeah, you're right. I mean, the actual oversight and the protocols in and of themselves, I think that I agree with you. My perspective is the same as far as the sheriff, and I think that ultimately they're gonna make sure they don't get caught with their pants down anymore, because as soon as you're not following protocols, that's when stuff like this happens. And if you're not
Right.
following them long enough, prisoners
Mhm.
are paying attention. That's what it comes down
Oh,
to.
absolutely,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? So that's
I
what
feel
it
like
is.
from the moment they enter the facility, they're looking for cracks. They're looking
Yeah,
for
especially if
opportunities.
if you're facing long time. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Oh
if
yeah,
if you have a 5-year sentence or 2-year sentence and you're trying to escape, you're an idiot. But
yeah.
you know,
Pretty much,
you're just an idiot, and
pretty
you
much.
deserve what you're gonna get. But if you have a long sentence, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, life, you're gonna be looking
Oh
for
yeah.
opportunity. You got nothing to lose. You know what I'm saying? So
Especially if you're in a metropolitan area, it's way easier to escape in
yeah,
an area like that than if
right,
you were taken to someplace like Angola that's
yeah.
virtually escape proof. I mean,
Right. And that was
people
that's the
people
whole
go there
thing. I
waiting.
mean, they weren't in people, so people understand they weren't in like a state prison. You're right. That makes a total different ball game as far as the escape. Not just the physical part of the escape, but the part of planning. Because if you're way out somewhere, the planning once you get out, if you do get out, has to be incredible. Because now you way out there, you probably it's going to be even harder because you got to get
Oh,
back to
it'd be
civilization.
extraordinarily hard because the prison at Angola, especially, I think it's something like, I don't know, 40, 50 acres, 100
Mhm.
acres, and then it's surrounded by just open miles and miles of open field. It's miles away from nowhere, and
Right.
so it would be way too easy for someone to be detected trying to pick up an inmate.
Yeah.
And if you were to even to make it off the prison grounds, that would be extraordinary because
Yeah.
they patrol the grounds by car,
Of course.
by horse. They have rifles
Right.
and they shoot to kill. I
It's like
mean,
you doing it's like two escapes when you're trying to get out of
mhm.
a state prison. So that's why it's rare, you know. But we're gonna see what's up. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Who do you think is responsible? This thing is gonna evolve, so we're gonna see who else is gonna be, put in jail or charged with this whole situation. But let us know what you guys think. Perspective Justice. We are out of here.